And we are recording video and audio, along with any slides that are shared. And I just wanted to start off by sharing that, I don't know if many of you know Coralie Pearson, who is in Spain. She actually translated The Course of Love into Spanish for Mari, for Glenn. And she can't participate in this call because of the time, but she did watch the video. And she just talked about how she was really impacted by it. And so, you know, these gatherings, I think, touch people's lives, and they might impact people who are in the call, or it might impact people who watch it. So I've encouraged Coralie, and I'm encouraging people who are listening to the video now or watching it, to provide input to Joan or me through email. So their participation may be a bit time delayed, but they can still provide suggestions or ask questions or offer up comments. So I just wanted to share that. I'm complete.
And yes, I've received several emails regarding the recordings that we've been sending out. And there's been wonderful response to the recordings. And a lot of people do have time issues. And so, but they always, they've been watching the recordings and like Coralie, just have wonderful input. So we're very happy to hear that. And I see that, is it Lemoyne Castle has joined us?
Yeah.
Can we hear?
Yeah, we'll be able to hear him. He's in Albuquerque.
Oh, okay.
He participates via our,
I didn't know if.
So should we dive in? I got a few slides.
Yeah, let's go ahead with that then.
And it seems to be appropriate for this kind of setting where we're facilitating facilitators. I describe it as herding lions. We're also passionate about this stuff. It's beyond herding cats. So this is kind of an agenda we have for today. There will be an opening meditation, and then a discussion around responding to creation's call that Joan will be leading. And then for the last half or third, we'll be having an open discussion, talking about how do we know when we are, as facilitators, are in our heart, or how do we receive guidance as facilitators. We might review some of the topics from last week that we said would be good, worth talking about. We might, if we have time, get into some of those, or just talk about, you know, where do we take our next session? What would be some good discussion topics? And then we'll have a closing meditation by Judy. We came up with these suggested guidelines, and so we might change them if we want. But just be aware of the spirit that emerges within our collective gathering here, that we're fostering dialogue. We want to see how ideas are contributed to as we're discussing them. Be succinct in what you share, mindful of the number. We're kind of small today. We've got about 9 of us, but still just be aware of that. And when you want to talk, and I thought about maybe changing this, just unmute your microphone. We ask people to generally mute. Most of us are muted. That's good for Zoom. Or if you have background noise. And when you're ready to share, unmute first, and then you might want to raise your hand or not. I mean, we could just jump in. I don't know about that. I don't want to use the Zoom features of chats or hand up because that just is too cumbersome. And then Joan suggested I walk through these again, that they just kind of illustrate the graphically what happens, I think, in any kind of gathering where we go deeper and deeper into dialogue. That we first start off thinking, and this is intended to illustrate people who are gathered around a table, say around a circular table. And Steve will experience this in a few weeks when he comes to Santa Fe. We do gather around a circular table here. So we think we're part of a large group when we're interconnected. As we enter dialogue, as we see ideas emerge and morph, we realize, wow, this is amazing to see what comes out of this group. And then as we further deepen dialogue, we realize, wow, relationship is our source of power. It is our source of inspiration and enthusiasm. So this idea that this collective web of relationship really starts to kind of vibrate and come alive and start speaking to us. And I don't know if I mentioned this to you last week, but this is actually a weaving done by Pueblo Indians in Mexico and New Mexico called a God's Eye. And it's intended to illustrate the invisible. And I think that's what we're doing here, is illustrating the invisible web of relationship. So I will stop sharing there. And any comments on what I've shared so far? I'll stop.
Well, I think that the last slide of the eye of God is so appropriate to our topic today in talking about creation, the call of creation. That's really what we're doing, responding to creation's call. And that's such a heartfelt picture designed from the Pueblo Indians. So thank you so much for sharing that. It's beautiful integration of the mind and heart. And that is what we're talking about, the integration of the mind and heart into unity. We live in the realm of unity, although we don't always know it. We're not always aware of it. Let's put it that way. We're in this accepting, knowing, returning, if you want, all those words, returning to the realm of unity. This process can be described sometimes as we are awake, we are awakening, and yet part of us slumbers still. So what is happening is that we are awakening to our awakeness. But the part of us that slumbers still, that also must be folded in to the embrace of our love, into our heart, so that we truly can become whole. So let us go further into our hearts right now. The topic today is opening the mind to the wisdom of the heart, just like our December conference, because this is the process of our awakening. So let us begin again with the meditation on entering the silence, going deep within our hearts. So I'll go ahead and read that. If you want to just center into your heart, close your eyes perhaps, and allow the heart to reign, to receive you. In silentness, the truth reigns. Our hearts are like an open book that can be read by feel alone. May our hearts then be our eyes' guide, a friend who takes us by the hand and leads us down the paths of love. With heart and mind as one we go, silently feeling quiet's way, until we come upon the truth, and then in silent stillness stay, comfortable and comforted, as quiet mists release love's rain. So let's now rise, but still staying within our hearts. Keep that spaciousness with you in our discussions as we continue here. Fortunately for me, when I read the poem, I too want to close my eyes, so I know it by heart, so it allows me to do so. But we want to just relax in that space, in that in the beauty of the heart space. So any images come up from that brief meditation?
Well,
This is Mark. As I entered into the meditation, Joe's words and his chart was still sort of resounding in my heart and mind. We do what's called a boundaryless meditation in our in-person group. And Joe mentioned, I think also, Joan, about what some of the Native American groupings do. I may have this wrong, but I think it's the Hopi Indians that assume not in a circle, but I think it's at 4 points, the north, south, east, and west, and present something based upon the position in which they're sitting. And each one listens in time. And then after that, they rotate. And then who was south becomes the north and espouses the north position, and so on. They rotate until each one has, in a sense, become the other. And the last 2 days of the dialogues, 39 and 40, speak to this, where we're asked to become the, I don't know if you'd call it projection of how we project onto God, what God is. And then on day 40, the other way around, that God or Jesus becomes how we think that he is, or how he thinks that we are. So it's similar to this Hopi type of thing, where not only do they become boundaryless, but very empathetic towards one another's position, and they end up literally being as one, complete.
That's beautiful. Yes. So anyone else with their practices that they're doing, it can be a home practice or with their groups.
Well, I just was when Mark was sharing about moving amongst north, south, east, and west, that one thing that we found, this is back to being a facilitator, one thing we found in our group that meets on Sunday is that it's really healthy for the group and the participants to rotate that role and let individuals take turns being a facilitator. And Lemoyne was recently a facilitator in our Sunday group. But I just think that's healthy. We found that to be healthy, especially in our Zoom group, to change roles. And anyway, I'm complete.
Right. So the role of a facilitator is to make easy. Facile from the French. To make easy, the way of the heart, the way of creation. So that's what we're about. Leading out again the wisdom that's in the heart, drawing from the well of spirit. And Judy, did your poem come from the well of spirit? Oh, from your heart? Oops.
It's
You
not my
unmute.
poem. It's just one that I love.
Uh-huh. But it touches your heart. That's the key.
Absolutely, it touches my heart. And
Yes.
absolutely.
And so when it touches your heart, we can share. We share it. And it touches other hearts. And pretty soon we have the eye of God visual that we just saw. Yeah, lovely. I'd like to, the Course in one place speaks about the well of spirit. There are others, but I wanted just read a paragraph from that. And it says, "Dear brothers and sisters in Christ, I come to you today as co-creator of the self you are and the self you hope to represent with your physical form. I come to you today not as a personal self who is other than you, but as a divine self who is the same as you. In our union, we bear the sameness of the Son of God. In going forth with a vision of unity, you become as I was during life. You receive and you give from the well of the Spirit. You need not prepare or plan. You need only to claim your inheritance, your gifts, yourself." So we're continuously drawing from this well, the well within. Yes, Barbara.
Yes. This reminds me of what happens in the mornings for me. I will be sitting and reading my courses, my course books, and then I will sit and I'll meditate. And that's where the creation begins, because it's almost like a weeping that starts to happen when I feel that I'm connected to spirit very strongly. And in that moment, it's even hard to put into words, the feeling from the heart and the mind. It's like, it's just not, I just can't find the words to speak about it, except that it's a true feeling that is undescribable sometimes. I just can't get those words out. But it's always in the quiet. When it happens, it's when you're quiet and you go deep. And you just know you're not alone in that moment. You feel that presence. And that's
Yes.
complete.
Yes. Anyone else?
I just think there's something especially powerful about the quiet, and whether in person or online, I noticed that our groups, the nature of the sharing and our tolerance for quiet between the shares deepens and increases if we can start off with some silence. And sometimes I measure the amount of silence between shares by the number of breaths I can take before somebody jumps in and says something. A 2 or 3 breath meeting is pretty awesome.
Mhm.
I'm complete.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, so we are responding to the call of creation, the call of creation to true life, to living truly here while in physical form. And in one place it says that is the miracle, The miracle that is occurring is for the truth to be lived in time. And as we stay grounded in our hearts, we can live the truth in time. And Barbara, I loved what you said. I'm not alone. And I used to have a lot of solitary time with A Course in Miracles and then the Course of Love. But you know, the question about when two or more gather together. Well, when I first started, how can I do that in the solitaire, being solitary? But when you're with God, with the divine self, you're not alone. Yeah. We are never alone because we are one and whole. So let us look at this, going to responding to true life. Remember that we said last week that creation was a dialogue to which we had not responded. Well, let's respond. And as we respond, we're responding from our hearts. We're responding to the true life that we can live here and now. And I'd like us to go to a section called Answering the Call. So if you have your books, we could have some readers for that section. It's Treatise 3. It's on page 243. And it's Treatise 2, chapter 3. Treatise 2, chapter 3, page 243. And we're just going to read about maybe four paragraphs, because the whole is in those 4 paragraphs. And they will lead us. Again, we're being led by the heart. In facilitating, we find that it is the heart that's leading the way, not really us, not our physical selves so much as the heart, which is allowing us to lead. We accept its guidance. So let's see about answering the call to true life. And do we have a reader for the first paragraph on 3.1? Okay, Steve, let's go with you.
Answer the call. Your life is already an act of creation. Was created, all of it. It exists, fully realized within you. Your work here is to express it. You are far more than your life here. You created your life here in union with the one mind and one heart in union. In other words, with God. Everything you have ever wanted to be is. Everything you have ever thought or imagined is, and is reflected in the world you see. The only difference between the life you are living and the life you want lies in your willingness to express who you are.
Is there a response to that before we move on?
Well, I kind of feel like I'm talking too much, but that's just who I am. But I mean, this is exactly what I'm going through right now in my life, is to, really boldly and clearly express who I am. And, my line of business is around bringing spirituality into the world of business. And there's been so much fear. People keep saying, you can't use the word spiritual in business. You can't talk about love and, the fact that we're creators. And I've really gotten to the point, it has only taken me like 17 years to get here. But I've really gotten to the point to say, no, I'm going to do this. This is who I am. This is what I'm about. And, I'll attract people who align with it and repel people who don't. And that's just fine. So I'm really focusing on expressing who I am. I'm complete.
Thank you. All right. So next reader. So next paragraph. Who would like to read?
This is Jeff.
Oh, Jeff. Okay.
By the way, Karen in Montrose, Colorado told me about this. She's in our group. I recognize your faces. I was on the December conference call too. So it's wonderful to find out that you all are back meeting, at least some of you, in this format. It's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
There would be no need for form if there had been no desire for expression. Life is the desire to express outwardly what exists within. What I refer to so often here as being within, as if within is a place in which something resides, is unity, and it is the place where being resides. It is the place or realm of one heart and one mind. It is the place where everything already exists, fully realized. It is like a trunk full of treasure, like a menu of possibilities. All you must do is wholeheartedly recognize the treasure you have already chosen to bring in the world. Your heart speaks to you of this treasure and guides you to open the trunk and release it to the world, to your world, to the human world. As I have said, in the realm of unity where your being resides, this is already accomplished. Your link between the realm of unity and the realm of physicality is your heart. Your heart tells you of the already accomplished and bids you to express it with your physicality, thus uniting the two realms through expression.
Yes. Uniting the two worlds through expression. The two realms through expression. Well, isn't that what Joe just shared? He's uniting.
Yeah, and I'm reminded how the Course of Miracles talks so much about all truth is generalizable. So if I want to bring together the world of spirit and this world, I need to bring together my mind and heart.
Yes.
As within, so without.
Exactly. Yes. Anyone else? Yes, Barbara.
Oh, I just wanted to say that the willingness, just a little willingness, each day when you go out and you have relationship with all that will come upon you that day, I feel that when you talk about spirit, you actually can visualize in the people that show up as spirit. And that's what I do on a visual scale. I see them, not just their body, but this is all happening to me very recently, really. I actually see them as spirit and know the truth of who they are, and that helps me to stay in my heart, no matter what goes on.
Yes. Wow. Beautiful. Thank you. So this realm of unity, where we live, where our being resides, requires wholeheartedness, requires a response of wholeheartedness. So let's go to another section in the course. This will be chapter 18 in the earlier part of the course, where it talks about the mind engaged. And so this is on page 125. So if those of you have your books, if we can just go back there,
Joan, could you tell us the chapter and treatise number?
This is in the first part of the course, and it's chapter 18, The Mind Engaged. And it's page 127, 126, 127. So
It's in the Course of Love book.
yes, the Course of Love. Yes. It's in the early part of the book. So chapter 18, and we're going to go to 18, here we go, 18.14. We'll start there. This section talks about giving birth to ideas, that is how we create, through actually giving birth to an idea. Now, if another person shared an idea, we still have to make that idea our own in order for it to be true with us, to be integrated into our hearts. So I just wanted to give you a little background for, I'll start off with 18.14, and then we'll have another reader after that. Once an idea is born, it exists in relationship to its creator. All that remains now is a choice of participation. In unity, all that you desired was participated in fully by a mind and heart combined in wholeheartedness. You knew yourself to be creator, the creator, and loved all that you created. You did not desire and fear something at the same time, and your desires did not change from moment to moment. What you desire, you experience fully with your whole being, making it one with you. That you keep yourself from desiring anything fully here is what makes this existence so chaotic and erratic. A mind and heart in conflict is what keeps you from desiring anything fully, and thus from creating. Thus, the integration of mind and heart must be our goal in order for you to create the state in which unity can be experienced. Obviously, this is up to you. As you chose to create a state of separation, you must choose to create a state of unity. So do we have another reader?
Can I share something real quickly?
Yeah, please. Yes.
I mean, I was listening to a podcast about by this guy named Arthur Brooks, who wrote a book called, Loving Your Enemy. And basically he's saying, we're in the time where that's needed. And basically what he describes in this book is the idea of dialogue. We love our enemy by listening to people we disagree with and then responding to them, letting them feel that we heard them. And, that's how we choose to create a state of unity, is by entering deep dialogue with people we disagree with. I'm complete.
Thank you. Thank you.
This is Mark. Joe, what you said is so true. this is not a but, it's just a corollary, I think, to what you said, is that we also have to be sensitive to those who still have strong boundaries. Sometimes, if they're not ready to accept or participate in either these ideas or us expressing them through who we are, I think we need be sensitive to that and not push on it. You did say earlier that some are drawn and some are sort of repelled to the deepest expression of who you are. So I think it's important not to look for results, not to look externally, oh, here I'm expressing from my heart and this other person isn't appreciating it or me. And we have to allow those to maintain their boundaries if they feel to do so. Complete.
I agree.
Yes. There seems to be an integration in our discussion between what Barbara had shared and about seeing the spirit in everyone, and then allowing, of course, those boundaries in the other, while still carrying forth your own vision, because that vision it's a unified vision. It's what you are here to do. So it all works so wonderfully. What a dance it is. What a dance creation is. And we're continuously being asked to join the dance. In fact, there's a section I'd like to read on that. This one is from the Embrace, and I'll just read that. The universe is a dance of cooperation. You are but asked to rejoin the dance. The embrace has returned you to attunement with the heartbeat, the music of the dance. You have not known what you do or what to do, only because of fear, only because you have been out of accord with the heartbeat. The world, the universe is your partner, and only now do you hear the music that brings grace to all your movements, all your actions, all your expressions of love. While this may seem to be metaphorical language, it is not. Listen and you will hear. Hear and you cannot help but rejoice in the dance. So isn't it beautiful what we're about here? Creating like unto the Creator. And that's the description in the course of the Art of Thought, creating like unto your Creator. And it's all different. Everyone has his or her unique contribution to that, to the dance, to the music. So let's go now to one of my favorite passages, which is in the energy of creation. So we're going to look at joining in this energy of the creation, joining in the energy of the dance. And this is going to be on page 376. It's in Treatise 4, Section 5. Again, Treatise 4, Section 5, page 376. And the chapter is called The Energy of Creation and the Body of Christ. The energy of creation and the body of Christ. So are we all there?
Yep.
And do we have a reader for the first paragraph? Okay, Barbara, go ahead.
The energy of creation and the body of Christ. Life everlasting in form is not your only choice. As many of you believed that I was the Son of God and more than a man before my birth, during my lifetime and after my death and resurrection, so are you. So are all who came before me and all who come after me. All that being a son of God means is that you represent the continuity of creation and that your fulfillment lies in the acceptance of your true inheritance. Complete.
There we are. We represent the continuity of creation. Creation couldn't get along without us. It needs us. In the first part of that chapter 18, it talks, the previous chapter we were reading, but it talks about a chain. And that we are all linked. So imagine a circle, everybody in the world holding hands with one another. And this is our unity, this is our wholeness. But imagine that somebody let go of another's hand. And then the circle would become a line that just flaps. So in order to be whole, in order for us to live truly, we're all unified. We're all one here, expressing that continuity of creation. We're all needed. Nothing's extraneous. Like the Bible says, every hair on your head is counted. So let's go ahead and read that, the second paragraph. Okay. Go ahead, Joe. Yes.
This could as easily be stated as your being a song of God. You are God's harmony, God's expression, God's melody. You and all that exist with you form the orchestra and chorus of creation. You might think of your time here as that of being apprentice musicians. You must learn or relearn what you have forgotten so that you can once again join the chorus, so that you can once again be in harmony with creation, so that you can express yourself within the relationship of unity that is the whole of the choir and the orchestra, so that you can realize your accomplishment in unity and relationship, so that you can join your accomplishment with that of all others and become the body of Christ. I'm complete.
Yes. So it said here, you might think of your time here as that of being apprentice musicians. Yes, Judy.
I just love this, the language of what we've been reading, the dance, the song, the whole idea of music. When you think about when we're together, moving, dancing, when I'm by myself dancing, I feel the relationship of creation, the giving and receiving. When you're with other people, I mean, think about when people are dancing and singing or listening to music together, and you don't even have to know you don't have to know the language if there's lyrics. Because you feel it. And that's what this is bringing up for me. It's also, with what you just read, Joe, reminded me of in A Course in Miracles, this link, this holding hands and link. No exception. There's no exception. No one left out of the circle. No one. I'm complete.
Thank you. Yes. For me as a facilitator, it's such a joy to facilitate. For me, it is like conducting a symphony while the music is being composed. It's absolutely exhilarating to see that kind of music being created by our group. And that's what we're doing here as well. It's beautiful. We are the song of God. The melody, the expression, the beauty of the dance. Anyone else?
This is Mark. There's another metaphor I like. It's a little different than symphony, or maybe expanding on it. There's something called Indra's net, which is so ancient that it isn't even written in Sanskrit. It predates that language. But the idea is that all of creation is like a net or a web, and at every intersection, there's a jewel. And each jewel has an infinite number of facets, and there are an infinite number of jewels. And each facet reflects one of the other infinite jewels. And it's both reflecting from what's outside, and then also if you peer inside of the jewel, it works in infinite direction in that way as well. So that there is only one thing, but each one is a totally unique expression of the entire being. The reason I like this so much is because, quite fascinating, is that it is a perfect metaphor also for quantum mechanics, quantum entanglement, because there really is not such a thing as an independent particle. Every single speck of mass is totally dependent on everything else in the universe. Complete.
Oh, thank you. That feels good. It really does. Joe.
Well, hello, everyone. This is Bill, Reverend Bill Heller from out in Hemet, California. I've been involved in the Unity Project with licensing and ordination up until just a few minutes before 3, and was zoned out in that and completely forgot about the meeting until now. So I apologize for being late. But I also want to say hello to the voice who was just speaking, because we're together Wednesday evenings, 5 o'clock our time here on the West Coast, with a group that's centered back on the East Coast. Hello.
Welcome.
Oh, is this Reverend Bill?
It is.
Oh, I just asked in our last gathering how wonderful it would be to actually envision your face, your physical form. And so a few days later, my wish was granted. So nice to see you. I'm complete.
Thank you, Mark. So I will Mark will attest to this, that last week on our weekly call, he spent some time speaking about seeing me smiling like a Cheshire cat as we do this work. Just being in a state of joy and realizing and awakening, and experiencing that moment of setting aside all thoughts, all ideas that I've had from the past, and just being in the experience in the moment. And from that perspective, realizing what we're receiving from the Course in that manner, in that instant, and being able to allow that to flow through. So I realized that, and I end up smiling to no end. And this is what Mark is alluding to during those Wednesday night calls. This, by the way, is my wife, Gloria, with us as well, who joins in on the calls. So,
Hello. Welcome, Gloria.
Thank you.
what a timely arrival to hear Mark sharing as he does, because he brings that same wisdom, that same analogy towards quantum mechanics to what we have on Wednesday evenings, and seeing and recognizing that as this expansion of wisdom or awareness that's here within us beyond what can be taught, right? Beyond what can truly be taught. Instead, what can, maybe the teaching leads us to the place where we're willing or we're open. But I certainly appreciate and revel in what I'm getting out of work with the Course of Love, with that Wednesday night group, with a Wednesday afternoon group at our church, and then with morning calls. So, thank you. And
Thank you.
Mark.
And what you and Mark have been sharing reminds me of how, I've experienced how the Course animates my life, and my life animates the Course. If I pay attention, I can see that connection. Yeah.
Well, Reverend Bill, now that I've also seen your beautiful bride, now I know really why you're smiling so much. It's also wonderful to see Gloria. So, well, great to actually not just have to envision what you guys look like, but see you in person. Thanks for that opportunity. Complete.
Hey, Joan, should we transition to the open discussion part?
Yes, I was just thinking that myself as well. It's just a natural transition. So,
Okay.
so to our questions, yes.
Yeah, let me share one of the slides. Hi, George.
Hi.
Let me share. We are an hour into the call. So what we want to do right now. And if you could mute your microphones, if we have too many people who are unmuted, we start getting a network effect in Zoom. We start getting some echoing. So what we want to do is take the discussion that Joan has led so far, and which is about opening our heart, and have some discussion. And I'm going to capture comments that are made into a slide. I'm not going to do it I'm not going to show the slide as I'm capturing those ideas. We'd like to just get into an open discussion and say, how do you know when you are in your heart, when you're accessing your heart? So that'd be the first question. Then after a while, if we have time, we might switch to the next one. How do you receive guidance as a facilitator? And, as we were preparing for this, Joan said, well, are we talking about this as an individual or as a facilitator? And what occurred to me is that we're all always facilitating. We may not have the formal title, but we may be a participant who's just helping the facilitator facilitate. So let me just start with that first question. How do you know when you are in your heart? And let me suggest that at this point, you don't need to raise your hand and be called on, just unmute and start talking. And when you're done, say, I'm complete. I'm complete.
This is Lemoyne. And one thing I was wondering, how do you answer that question? And I think it's what is obvious to me is when I'm not in my heart, when I've got some old pattern firing off in my brain that's, having me judge myself or something like that. I'm talking from the past or something like that. And so how do I know when I'm really in my heart? I, the lesson that's been coming through from the readings here and from my experience is I think I really can only really know when I'm expressing from that place. And yeah, I mean it's something about the carrying and holding to actually get to channeling is to not get thrown by that self-awareness of whether or not I'm in my heart, but just to be able to continue to express from that place. So I'm complete.
Well, what Lemoyne was saying is kind of what corresponds for me. I recognize that when I'm in those situations when there's nothing blocking what's coming through to be shared is when I feel the freedom of simply sharing, of simply being in that moment. And those calls that I was just mentioning on Wednesday evening, when I have those experiences, afterwards, I recognize that freedom, that heart opening that was going on during that time, contrasted to so much of the time when there's some sort of figuring out, some sort of history that's involved in developing an answer or a response to someone. So that's my experience. Thanks. I'm complete.
My experience of being in my heart is more like a feeling. It's an inspired feeling.
Can you speak up a bit?
Yeah, can you hear me now? Is this better?
Yeah.
Okay. When I feel inspired to share something, the words come that I'm to share, and there's a sensation of connection and openness, both in my heart and in the expression that goes forward to whoever I'm expressing with. And there's a sensation of it being received. So for me, feeling my heart open is really visceral, and it brings joy. I'm complete.
Joe, for myself, I recognize it as a sense of contentment or peace, serenity. There's like a feeling that arises that it's hard to express in words. You recognize the sharing that's going on, and that seems to be adequate. Words don't need to come forward. Are we still live, Joan or Joe?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Your video went. You stalled.
Well, I do that sometimes.
I'm complete.
Barbara. Mhm.
Just now, I just realized that I know when I'm in my heart, there's a happiness that comes about, and it's always in sharing with someone. And when I can feel that feeling of I was able to give, I receive a lot. And that's how I know that I'm in my heart. So I agree with just what Steve, I think it is, that spoke very much. It's not even words, it's a feeling inside of you. I'm complete.
Yeah, this is
there's
Jeff. I think for me, it's like Steve and Barbara both said, it's more of a feeling of being at peace, both in listening to what's being shared and just whether, and not trying to decide whether I agree or disagree with it, just accept that they're sharing it. It's not a matter of are they right or wrong, do I agree or disagree? It's just that sense of peace and just enjoying everyone sharing. And then, when I speak myself again, it's when I share, it's just coming, it's just hard to put into words. You just feel like, this is something coming through me. It's not something my head has conjured up, but it's just something coming through. I'm complete.
it seems like there's a paradoxical aspect to the peace that comes when I connect with truth or when I'm connecting to the heart. And I'm reminded of this poem that keeps coming back in some of these discussions, and it's by a guy named William Butler Yeats. And he said, we can make our minds so like still water that beings gather around us and live a fiercer life because of our quiet. There's an intensity that seems to come when I'm sharing from the heart. It's not always just warm and loving and fuzzy. There's some intensity to it. I'm complete.
I resonate with what you just shared in terms of the intensity. Not always, of course, but often for me, it's a feeling as well as others have expressed that, and it's a lack of thinking. It's just like the connection is open, and with all, if there's another persons, and with source, and sometimes it is a strong intensity of that is both listening and receiving as well as sharing. So I'm complete.
Oh, this is Mike. Joe, the first time I met you and Lee Flynn, I think we met at a restaurant, and I just felt so at one with you guys that I can't remember what was said. It was just this wonderful feeling. And then unfortunately you had to leave, but Lee and I moved outside and sat across from each other. It was a real warm afternoon. And we were just looking at each other. And while that was going on, a bird came from over my shoulder and landed on the back of my hand. And just spontaneously, I started stroking this bird, I think a sparrow, with the back of my index finger on his underbelly, his or hers. And the bird just not only remained there, but sort of started almost like dancing, picking up one foot and then another. And sometimes when you're really loving a cat, the cat starts kneading on you, digging their claws into you. And this bird was doing that without, any speaking going on. So for me, when I feel like I'm coming from the heart, there is no world. I mean, there is no inside, outside. It's just, just a total melding with everything, complete.
Was poetic that you experienced that in the town of St. Francis of Assisi, Santa Fe.
If I may, I want to say that I want to relate it with what Barbara shared a few moments ago. And I recognize that what makes all the difference in the sharing, what the heart-based aspect of it is the relationship with all others who are there, that we are sharing with at that point. Must be smacking of the union that we're learning of as our oneness on the one hand. I cannot remember specifically at this point what it was that I was sharing this at this most time. Recognize that when I need it, it will be there. But in the meantime, what I do remember is the experience of love, the experience of connection with all others who were there as a part of it. We're even looking at this from the standpoint of recognizing that we come together for that oneness and growing from that. As I say that now, I recognize that this is a key aspect of what I'm getting from A Course of Love. I believe many of us are in that regard. It doesn't need to be stored in the head. We just need to know that it's available. It's there waiting for us to share at the right time, in the right instant, in that right setting. Thank you. I'm complete.
I have a question I'd like to ask. If anyone else has ever experienced this feeling when you're sharing from the heart, that like a vortex open and the sound almost echoes in the room, like you're joined by something, it's definitely unity. It's definitely union that's happening. But has anyone else experienced a vortex opening in the room and kind of feeling like you're in a chamber, that what you're sharing is informing so many others that you can't see in the space that you're in? I know sometimes that happens for me, especially when truth is being shared.
Well, it's interesting that we just experienced that all as you were sharing, because we were experiencing, I think, an echoing, a vortex. So I found that interesting. I'm complete.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. I also feel I would describe it sometimes as a resonance. And sometimes, just as just happened, we were all in a vibratory resonance with what is being said. And it's so beautiful that miles, physical proximity, has nothing to do with it. And here we are all sharing from our hearts. It is so lovely. I have described or called this landing in a field of love and just being embraced by that field. Rumi has said, beyond right doing and wrongdoing, there is a field, and I will meet you there. Mm. And I feel like that's what we're doing. We're coming from our hearts, not from our minds. We're experiencing the joy and well-being of relationship in a benevolent universe. Complete.
Well, I've just had the joy of capturing what people have said. And feel free to interrupt me at any time and say, hey, Joe, you're being too much of a taskmaster. But let me just share with you this list that I accumulated from all of us. And we don't need to go through it. But to me, this illustrates how the unknown becomes known, how ideas surface and morph and take on a life of their own. And we learn from each other as we enter dialogue together. In this case, what does it mean to be in our heart? This will be, sent out in email after the fact, along with the recording. And I just have a question here, I guess, for Joan and everybody else. Should we go on to the next question and have some dialogue around that, which was, how do we receive guidance as a facilitator? When we're dealing with challenges, should we go on to that topic or what?
Well, for me, I'm content with answering, being in relationship, let's say, with that one question of opening our hearts. And it's all about what we've been about today, just bringing out the wisdom of our hearts and letting it being shared. It's the well is overflowing.
Okay.
And so I really
we'll stay
I'm
with that.
complete with our session that way. And I do want to make time also. We're about 20 minutes, I guess, from the end of our program. Is that correct? Or is it maybe 15? Yeah. At any rate, I want to hear Judy's prayer as well. But if there's some other things that need to come up first, that's fine too. But I'd like to save that question for next week.
Okay, and I also would like to, as we're entering dialogue here and continuing in dialogue, to hear from you about how this group is working, any suggestions you have for how this is working, how it could be improved, and or any topics for next week. I think we probably will get into where do we turn to for guidance, but I'm complete.
It was my understanding, Joe, that we meet every other Monday. Is that accurate?
Yes, I was mistaken. Our next session in 2 weeks. We meet every other week.
Okay, thank you.
And we are meeting, well, as you joined us, it's 3 o'clock, which is Arizona time, or 3 o'clock Pacific time will be our permanent time, definitely throughout the summer. So, is the time working better for you? That's another question.
Joan and Joe, may I ask, is your plan to make this dialogue indefinite, or do you see some kind of a time frame for it, or what's your vision?
Well, I want to let the group lead. I want to let the group lead how we spend our time together, where we focus our time, what topics we focus on, how this works. And I think at some point in time, the group may say, this is enough. And maybe the group decides we're done. But I think it's tapping into the spirit that lives in the collective web of relationship and letting that be our guidance. I'm complete.
Okay.
I hope this is not off topic, but I think there's perhaps some people who have joined for the first time. And I wonder if there is time, if we should give them just a minute or two, each one, like George and Michelle and Bill and Gloria, to just tell us very briefly about themselves so we know who they are. Just a suggestion.
Thank you.
Complete.
So could we, who would like to begin?
Mark,
do you have a comment? I myself am not seeing everyone. I see George and hear Christopher, but yeah, who were the other two that you mentioned? Let's see.
I think Mark mentioned Gloria, my wife.
Oh, yes. Okay.
And I'll see if I can get her back. But in the meantime, I was on, I believe, the first call that you had 4 weeks ago, and mentioned the different groups that I'm involved in. I'm down in southeast California, down in Hemet in the desert. It's called Hemet. And I realize that it makes sense that more and more just the joy, what I'm getting out of A Course of Love mirrors what I experienced with A Course in Miracles when I was going through that on a daily basis for the previous 28 years or so. And, you know, I've been with A Course of Love now virtually every day for the last 4 years in one form or another, and grateful for how A Course in Miracles set the stage. Clearly, I see the link between the two. I see this as just a continued progression of the healing that began with A Course in Miracles. So I'm involved in both of them on an ongoing basis, and will be, and am committed to the two of them. I'm a Unity minister because I found Unity about 6 months after I found Course in Miracles. And when I went back to reading Charles Fillmore, I began hearing him speak about the same illusion that we're putting out there and believing that that's what's real. That's right at the core, at the heart of Unity's basics or basis in its principles and its teachings. So I know too that there are other Unity ministers and people involved in Unity throughout the country that are getting involved more and more, that they're in their respective groups. And I'm actually have an idea of trying to bring them together in a network. Maybe perhaps having them included in this call. So, somebody asked where I'm going or what I'm up to at this point, and essentially this is what the gift that we're receiving from our work here, that's here for me, that I see as just a continued perpetuation of what started for me about 29 years ago. So I have one question. Is there a limit as far as the number of people who can be on this conference call at a time?
So the technical limit for Zoom, I think, is 50. But we are limiting ours to around 20, and then we lock the meeting. Because I think when you get more than 20 people in a Zoom call, it becomes unwieldy. So 50 is the technical limit, 20 is the practical limit, as I see it.
Joe, an idea that has occurred to me is though that if some of those, some of the people who would like to participate, if they can join in one room, I don't see, there could be a couple of TV sets, but I think we could embrace that way a lot more people in that situation. So if you have other people who would like to join you on the call, and as long as one or two computers.
Yeah. Yep.
And Bill, also, I like the idea of well, a lot of people have Course in Miracles background, and I'm a facilitator of a combined course, ACIM and ACOL together, and it has been such a joy to express that and present that. There's such a synergy between the two courses, and that intertwining, it's like a rope pieces that intertwine, and it's one expands the other. You can read perhaps a Course of Love passage and then go to a Course in Miracle passage and see it again for the first time. It can be just a beautiful relationship, a beautiful dynamic. And so that's something we can expand on. It could be a spin-off from this group. There are just so many possibilities. So whatever's in your heart. As Joe said, we're going to let this our meetings, reflect what you are about. That's key. because we're all joined in unity, and let's express it. Yes, in all the ways it can be expressed. I'm complete. Are we? Joe, I'm complete.
Yeah. Yeah, as I said before, I live in Montrose, Colorado, and I think sometime around the mid 80s is when I discovered the Course and have been involved with A Course in Miracles ever since. And then I don't know, when shortly after, I still have my old books and the Course of Love, and they're the ones that are all written up with notes and stuff. It's nice to have the other book with me. But I discovered something a few years ago about, and I just want to read it very briefly, that it's kind of a direct link between the Course in Miracles and Course of Love, and it's in that last "What Is" section, in the workbook, and it's "What am I?" In the very last paragraph, I'll just read about 3 sentences. We are the holy messengers of God who speak for Him, and carrying His word to everyone whom He has sent to us, we learn that it is written on our hearts, and thus our minds are changed about the aim for which we came and which we seek to serve. And it just really, I was trying to figure out, well, not trying to figure out, but, finding the Course of Love and the Course in Miracles, like I think Bill said, the Course in Love seems to be an extension. And those 3 or 4 sentences, when I discovered that, I thought, man, this really, it almost like in the Course in Miracles, it was, I can't think of a word, not predicting, but almost was like saying, hey, there's more coming, and it changes our hearts for why we're here and how we seek to serve. So that's was a beautiful discovery for myself. I'm complete.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. So if I may, one item that I'm noticing here that is particularly attractive, it's not saying that anything else is wrong or different, but what I feel here is a group who are committed and devoted and celebrating A Course of Love, perhaps A Course in Miracles as well. And we're having this discussion without referring to any of the material within the book. It's as if to say, are we living A Course of Love? Do we have this time together to be living and expressing through the Course of Love, or watching or observing ourselves expressing what we're getting from A Course of Love in this gathering?
Well, I'm sorry, I just really love that idea of living the Course of Love. But back to you. I didn't mean to interrupt, Bill. Yep. Yes.
I was complete. Thanks, Joan.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, this is George. I thought I'd just jump in real quick, and I apologize I was late. I thought it was 4 o'clock, and for me, the way the love shows up in all of you is that if I'm late or whatever I am, you allow me to be that. And in turn, I can allow you to be whoever you are and what you are. And I've been with Course in Miracles and Course of Loves and for 35 years, 36 years with 12-step groups. And this is really, I found this, and it's a priority for me. I've traveled for many years. We lived between here, California and Germany, and I would take my motorcycle by myself into a lot of different countries. And people used to say, how can you do that? What do you speak? Russian or Italian, or what languages do you speak? I said, I just speak English, but I speak the one universal language. And they said, what's that? And I said, the language of the heart. And I was saying that 20 years ago because out on the road, and that's what I meet, because I'm in my heart. And here, as soon as I get online, I don't care what group it is, it's like that ball, it drops real quick from the head to the heart. And it's such a good feeling. And I want that all the time. And to give that to others, it's just a blessing. And, I feel like I listen to all of you, and sometimes I feel like a little duck out of water. Which way do I want to go? But I can just be the way I am. And for me, especially Joe, he's really helped me so many times. But everyone has. And that for me is the blessing. And I'm committed. I've gotten to online Sunday mornings from a lot of different countries, a lot of different places, and it's worth it. My heart just feels so good. When I got you and I saw everybody was on the screen, it was like my heart made a big smile. I feel my heart smiling just to see your faces, because we're in the same place, and that's such a beautiful place to be. And I will work on being on time next time. I'm complete.
Glad you could join us, George. And I love what you have to share. You do share from the heart. So thank you.
Well, Joe and Joan, thanks for making this space available. I'll see you in a month. In 2 Mondays from now, I'll be on my way west. So I hope to see you guys out there. Thanks.
Wonderful.
I love you guys.
Right.
Okay. And could we have Judy read the poem to close our session? Yes. And thank you all for your participation here. It's been beautiful. Absolutely. So
This is a poem by Mary Oliver called The Journey. One day, you finally knew what you had to do and began. Though the voices around you kept shouting their bad advice. Though the whole house began to tremble and you felt the old tug at your ankles. Mend my life, each voice cried. But you didn't stop. You knew what you had to do, though the wind pried with its stiff fingers at the very foundations, though their melancholy was terrible. It was already late enough, and a wild night, and the road full of fallen branches and stones. But little by little, as you left their voices behind, the stars began to burn through the sheets of clouds. And there was a new voice, which you slowly recognized as your own, that kept you company as you strode deeper and deeper into the world, determined to do the only thing you could do, determined to save the only life you could save.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. May you go in love and joy. And we'll see you next time.
I have a favor to ask of Judy. Would you mind typing that up and emailing it to me?
I have it on a document already in my computer. I'll send it.
Okay, I'm going to put it into the final slide for the slides that go out.
Okay.
That was perfect.
Thank you, everyone, for this beautiful gift of your hearts.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Blessings to all. Karen, is this the Karen who I met a couple weeks ago when we missed the call?
Yes, sir, it is, Bill.
Okay, Karen.
We both made it this time.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did. Blessings all.